Welcome to the continuation of the Taxi of No Return. Kofi stood frozen, watching the cursed taxi disappear into the mist, taking Isaac with it. His heart pounded in his chest as guilt weighed heavy on him. He had just watched his best friend unknowingly climb into the same nightmare. He had barely escaped. Isaac was gone, and Kofi was responsible. The city around him seemed normal, bustling with life. He couldn't go home. He couldn't just stand there and wait for the inevitable. He had to find a way to stop this curse before it claims more lives. The nightmares had been growing worse, but they were starting to show him something more: visions of the taxi's true nature and its driver. Kofi had seen glimpses of a ritual, an ancient ceremony where the taxi driver had been bound to the car, cursed it to carry lost souls into an endless void. It was a curse that could only be broken if the driver was banished forever. That night, Kofi didn't sleep. Instead, he began researching the old legends his grandmother had told him as a child. He searched for anything that could help him understand the curse. Days passed, and Kofi became more desperate, but finally, he found something. An ancient binding ritual used by elders to drive away malevolent spirits. It required courage, focus, and the help of those closest to the cursed. Kofi knew what he had to do, but he couldn't do it alone. He needed the support of his family, his grandmother, who knew the old ways, and his mother, who had always warned him about the dangers of the night. Together, they could face the driver and end this nightmare once and for all. The next morning, Kofi gathered his mother, who was supportive. His grandmother, with her wrinkled hands and wise eyes, nodded as Kofi explained the ritual. She agreed to help, but warned him, the driver will not leave easily. His power grows stronger with each soul he takes. You must be prepared for what is to come, she said. As they prepared for the ritual, the air grew heavy with tension. Kofi's mother lighted candles, and his grandmother scattered herbs and sacred objects around the room. They began to chant softly, calling on the spirits of their ancestors for protection. Suddenly, a cold wind blew through the house. Even though all the windows were shut, the air felt thick, and the faint sound of a car engine hummed outside. Kofi's heart skipped a beat as he knew the taxi is around. Kofi stepped outside into the night, his hands trembling as he clutched a small charm his grandmother had given him. The taxi, its headlights dim and flickering, slowly pulled up to the curb. The driver's eyes glowed, red from inside the darkness of the car. You shouldn't have returned. The driver's voice echoed in the cold air, sending chills down Kofi's spine. Kofi swallowed his fear. I won't let you take anyone else. This ends tonight. The driver laughed, a low, menacing sound. You cannot stop what has been bound for centuries. I will always return. But Kofi had learned something from the visions. The driver's power came from fear and submission. The more people feared him, the stronger he became. Kofi's grandmother had told him that in order to break the curse, they had to face the driver without fear. His grandmother and mother stepped outside, joining Kofi. Together, they formed a circle around the taxi, their voices rising in unison as they chanted the ancient words of the ritual. And the car began to shake violently, as if trying to break free. The driver's eyes narrowed, the air around them grew colder, and a thick mist began to swirl. But Kofi and his family didn't stop. Their voices grew louder, stronger. The driver's red eyes flickered, and for the first time, Kofi saw something he hadn't expected. He saw fear. The driver's once confident gaze melt away. Suddenly, the taxi's headlights dimmed, and the engine shaking. The driver gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. You cannot do this. I am bound to this world. Kofi stepped forward, holding the charm tightly in his hand. Not anymore. With a final burst of energy, Kofi and his family completed the ritual. The ground beneath the taxi began to crack, and the mist swirled violently around it,
pulling the car into a dark, underground swirling vortex. The driver's face twisted in fury, but his body and his taxi began to fade, dissolving into the mist. His voice echoed one last time, "This is not over." The taxi and its driver were pulled into the vortex, and in a flash of light, they were gone. The street was quiet. The air was still. The curse had been broken. But as Kofi stood there, catching his breath, he realized something. Isaac was still lost. Trapped in the void like the others, he had to find him. The next night, Kofi returned to the place where the taxi had taken Isaac. This time, the streets were silent, no faint engine hum in the distance. Kofi called out into the darkness, "Isaac, if you're there, I'm going to bring you back." Suddenly, a faint, flickering light appeared in the distance, growing stronger. Kofi's heart raced as he recognized the glow. It wasn't the cursed taxi, but something else, something familiar. The light grew closer, and from the mist, Isaac emerged, stumbling toward Kofi. Isaac? Kofi ran to his friend, pulling him into a tight embrace. Isaac looked confused and disoriented, but alive. "I don't know what happened," Isaac said, his voice shaky. "I thought I was lost forever." Kofi smiled, tears of relief welling up in his eyes. "You're back. You're safe now." Together, they walked back to the city, leaving the dark streets behind. The curse had been lifted, the driver banished, and Isaac returned. But as they walked, Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The night was calm, and the city lights flickered, normally but deep inside. Kofi knew that the driver's last words still lingered. "This is not over." As they turned the corner, Kofi thought he saw and heard something, or maybe it was his imagination. A shadow in the distance, and the echo of an engine in the wind. Maybe the driver was gone. Maybe he wasn't. But for now, Kofi and Isaac were free, and that was all that mattered. Moral lesson is importance to confront our fears and not letting them control us. In the end, it was their lack of fear and their courage that weakened the driver's power. Fear gives power to our challenges, but bravery and unity can help overcome even the most terrifying obstacles.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more.